best thing we could be doing rather than sitting home and stressing? Because you're not going to know till like 10. Might as well be busy. Are you? I haven't heard how it resolved. It's not. I all I knew was what was happening the day of, and I never knew what, who, or what, or anything. So
Yes. Excuse me. It's 4 o'clock. Calling to order the Parowan City Council meeting. It's November 4th, 2025. It is 4:01 p.m. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate you coming out to this special meeting. We do not have anyone committed to opening ceremonies, do we? Okay, thank you.
Well, I didn't know we do those things, or I would've got my act together.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads today to give thanks for the many blessings in which you have given us. Please bless that as we meet today, that we can have open minds and do the business of the city the way that it should be pleasing to thee. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. That was like so fast too. You were like, I'll do it. Appreciate it. All right. Do we have any conflicts or personal interest in the agenda items by the city council members?
No, Mayor. No.
All right. Now we'll move directly into our work agenda. This is the work through Legacy B Estates Development Agreement. And Legacy B Estates are here, which is awesome. All three of you. It's good to see you. Do we start with them? I mean, we haven't done this particular type of meeting before. You want to give kind of an overview, or
yeah,
do
let
you
me put some framework to the meeting. We and just had a conversation with Councilman Burton about that, the nature of having this work meeting. We do have a work meeting agenda portion of every city council meeting, and we had a 3-week gap. B, we expect to be able to take some time and go into a considerable amount of detail on this. We're operating more like in more of a planning commission role. It's obviously a legislative issue to approve this, but this is a kind of a, workshop type of an item, because of the nature of where we're at with it. So that's why we figured that it would be best done in a work meeting. There is no action item on the agenda to take action, but really just try to work through where we're at. So having said that, let me give a little bit of a background of where we're at in this process. Legacy B Estates, we've been working with, is it okay if I just call you the Swansons? The Swansons on this for some time. We worked with the Planning Commission. They went through the whole process, review, and made a recommendation. It came to City Council. The reason why it goes to City Council on something like this is because PUDs, which aren't a thing anymore under code, the application was in before that, but it is a legislative process because you are essentially, by development agreement, allowing variances per code. You're allowing, not a variance, maybe a variance is the wrong word, but you're allowing them to have things that our code would otherwise restrict in a planned unit development, and so you're coloring outside of the lines, and therefore that's why the city council gets involved. So we were in the process of working on a development agreement. We had, after the Planning Commission made their recommendation, we brought it to City Council. see if I can remember this I don't know if I'm gonna have it exactly perfect, so don't quote me if I'm wrong. We had it on a work agenda, presented the concept, had some conversation. We came back with the city came out with a proposed development agreement, a document, and that was sent to the developer. Developer went through and made some red lines in their desires and wishes to change it in ways that they wanted to see it. And then I think we had another work meeting and a discussion, and we kind of got right down into nuts and bolts. It was in a work portion of a standard agenda, and then it was kicked to the next meeting to, I guess, fine-tune that and vote on something. And that's the process we were at, was ready to actually, by division of the vote if necessary, take action and decide what was going to be in the development agreement, so the city council had its version of what it could live with and not. That was on an agenda, and then that agenda item was withdrawn, was requested to be withdrawn by the developer. And so we pulled it from that agenda. So there's been some misconceptions that PUD was approved, and it never was, just because we didn't ever take a vote, because we didn't have a finalized development agreement on terms. Developer wanted to go back to the drawing board and consider some other options, and it's been in that space this whole time. They have reached out here and there with a question, clarification. They've one of the major items that we discussed, and there was a lot of discussion about, was the idea of owning land versus leasing land, and how would that work. There was a lot of conversation about that, and so the developer went back to the drawing board with thinking about potentially doing that, actually just doing a typical subdivision, and what would that look like, and have met with me a time or two, and I've clarified what that would look like, what our code says about this item or that item, and finally they have met with their engineer and have come up with a new proposal. They sent that new proposal to me a couple of weeks ago, and said, what do you want to, how do we move forward? They wanted to move forward with, essentially their new proposal is a hybrid. There's two parcels. One is a 10-acre piece, which was the original piece, and the other is a 5-acre piece, and they were looking at doing more of a traditional type subdivision where lots will be purchased, homes can be purchased, and the person will own the lot, and then the 5-acre piece they wanted to reserve for their original concept, where people would lease a lot, lease a space, and buy a home. And so they sent me a set of plans, which I forwarded to the city council for the 10-acre piece, and said, how do we move forward with this, essentially? And it's important to always make sure we're following good process. And I said, listen, we do not anymore allow PUDs per our city code, with the exception of a very few circumstances, none of which what they're thinking about now would qualify. But since your application was in, you are entitled to that application being vested with a code at the time, which did allow for PUDs, assuming that we could come up to an agreement that we agreed to. And I said, just the fact of having an application in does not grandfather you to do a PUD for time and the rest of ownership of this property. A successful application gets you that PUD. If you withdraw that application and do something else, you've lost that vestment of being able to do a PUD. So that's why I told them, if you want to proceed forward and you want to do a PUD in that 5-acre piece, even if it's a later phase, we need to finish this PUD process with the city council, because that's where we're at. We're waiting to finish negotiating the development agreement. And when we looked right at their subdivision application, or their new concept for the 10 acres, which was a traditional subdivision, it isn't traditional enough of a subdivision, meaning they need some variances in order to make that work. But since we're already in the PUD space, it could be a subdivision, it could be this other concept, it doesn't matter, but it does need to be a PUD if we're not gonna follow precisely the code. So I said, let's bring it back to the council, let's show the council what your new concept is, and let's talk through these items. I mentioned there's probably a couple of issues that they're gonna want to discuss. I don't ever wanna put words into the council's mouth, but relating to open spaces and relating to parking and certainly related to the street, in order to make it work, there's gonna have to be some, and we can go through those line by line, but essentially what we're here to talk about tonight is the concepts of what they're proposing, and if we can come to the same page, then we can write up a development agreement and move forward with potentially a 10 acres of subdivision, traditional subdivision. We'll get into the detail of whether it would be city-owned streets or not, or whatever, and an HOA or not, and then the 5 acres. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about.
Yep.
Before we get into the specific details, did I miss anything, Brody? Anything, Jody? Anything that you wanna?
Yeah, I think you hit it pretty solid. One thing I just do wanna mention on the 10 acres is it's kinda set up as a traditional, residential subdivision, just with two small exceptions that we'd be asking for you guys is the smaller road widths. Our homes are not very wide, but they go really deep into a lot. So the road widths are a big deal because we're not very wide on the subdivision, but we're really deep as well. So fitting the homes in the pads right there it's pretty essential to have the little bit smaller road widths. And then the setbacks for the backyard, in order to fit the best one of the model homes that we sell over at Afford Your Housing for the subdivision, we would like to have a little bit deeper lots. Not all of them have to be the big home, the Shoshone that is my model home right now, but if we can get an exception to break into the setbacks in the rear, then that would open up a lot of opportunities for floor plans going into the subdivision right here.
Okay. That makes sense to everybody. Depending on the home they put on there, may be a setback problem and may not.
Mm-hmm.
And after doing the math, depending on the road and not as much the road, but the right of way, they're very, very similarly related. The setbacks might have to get very narrow in the back for some of these housing plans. So, okay, so ownership discussion. Let me start off with that. So I mentioned it. There's basically 3 things that we're considering here. One is a PUD with a homeowners association or some entity like that that takes responsibility for maintenance of the streets, including snow plowing and repairing of the streets, chip sealing, whatever they need, and maintenance of the utilities and all of that stuff. We typically do not allow a dedication unless everything is built to the city engineering standard. The PUD across the street, we have not taken over those roads. They are not up to the city standard, and same with the utilities inside there. And in order to allow the road dedication and dedication of the utilities, all of them have to be up to our standard. And so we'll talk more about that, but if we don't take it over, the only way we are going to approve the PUD is that there is a mechanism in place, and typically that's done with a homeowners association that can charge a fee, and that can collect a fee, and can manage the maintenance contracts and things like that, right? So that's one of the options there. I don't want to call it option 1. The other is a PUD that does not have a homeowners association, and that's because it's built up to a standard that we're willing to adopt. Why would we do that? The answer would be respective of the roads and the utilities, they're built up to our standard, but maybe other parts of the PUD are not. Therefore, It will still be a planned unit development, but we will allow the acceptance of the city streets, right? It would have to fit our criteria, and we have a potential, option that we could consider that maybe we could live with. But it would be something that would be canonized in our engineering standards that could be used in anywhere across the city. We wouldn't create something, unique for these guys. So that's a PUD where the city takes over the roads and that's what their preference is, just so everybody knows.
Absolutely.
And then the third option is a PUD with private ownership and maintenance, which is essentially their original plan and what they're talking about doing in the 5 acres. We're not gonna have any involvement in the streets or anything if it's one big parcel that's owned by them. We don't wanna own streets that go right through somebody's property. We wanna own streets inside a subdivision. We don't wanna own streets and power lines and water lines and stuff inside somebody's lot. And so, there's 3 different types of entities that we're talking about. And if they do a hybrid and have something else on the 5 acres versus the 10 acres, we just have to make sure that all of the paperwork, but more the infrastructure of who's gonna maintain it and all that stuff is all accounted for in that development agreement, so that it has longevity. That's the whole point, is 20 years from now, it functions, and it's not broken, and then you have angry citizens coming to the city. So we'll probably have 2 out of these 3 things that'll be in this development if we go along with the idea of the hybrid, right? So that's the first thing. Any conversation there before I move on to the next thing, which is public streets and utility dedication, and why and what we're gonna really talk about in there that's not related to public utilities and street?
Dan, do you know of any PUD with private ownership and maintenance
Yeah, the one across the street is.
of the Eagle Rock?
Oh, wait. It's owned by the HOA. I don't know of any other one that is the option that they originally brought to us. It's more of a park model,
I
which is
didn't know if we
which is
had
a
any.
common thing, just we don't have any in Parowan.
Gotcha.
I mean, the closest thing to it would be Foothills, and it's ran by an HOA.
Right.
Foothills is amazing too, by the way. A lot of people in that subdivision absolutely love it.
And they own their little their parcel, right?
Right.
So, and we talked about that, and there was a lot of angst about that concept. I mean, we explored that a lot. And I don't know where the council left on how they feel about that idea of leasing land and owning a home, but that's in their proposal still on the table, but for the 5 acres. I put words into your mouth. These guys feel like they went back and came up with an option that if somebody comes into their sales office and says, I would rather lease rather than own land, then they'll give them the one option. And if they say, I'd rather own my land rather than lease it, then they'll give them that option. And that's kind of your idea, right?
Exactly, yep. And I've been dealing with a lot of buyers that have been coming in and saying, well, I'd rather own my parcel, but there are about 20% of the people that have come through and said, hey, I just can't qualify for a $350,000 home. Can I buy this $165,000 home without land? Where can I put it? Well, hopefully we'll have a solution for you soon, so.
So assuming the council is comfortable with that concept of that thing, we administratively would just wanna make sure that the disclosures are proper and everything, so they know what they're buying and what they're leasing and how that all works and what happens if it goes south and all that stuff, so.
If it went south, the city would not be any liable for it anyhow, right? It's up
I
to
mean,
the city with,
people can always sue whoever they wanna sue, but if we do our job right in going through their documents, I think we'd be fine. You know, when somebody rents a hotel room, we hope that they have their documents in a, you know, obviously a home is a bigger deal than a transient stay in a hotel room, I'm just saying. We can explore that more. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the public streets and utility dedication. So their main issue is they have a width problem of the shape of the lot, the parcel that they're starting with, and our requirement to have two methods of ingress, egress. By the time they would like to have homes, and are required to have two roads, it gets where you're into this mutually exclusive, real estate. Right now, the plans that they submitted have here, I'm gonna put this up here. This was the document, and I just sent this out earlier today, so hopefully everybody got a chance to look at it. I was trying to figure out how to explain it all tonight, and when I got it done, I sent it out to the council. They have a 38-foot right-of-way. Now, this is my typical section, and I had to back into these widths because I knew that you had a 38-foot right-of-way. You're proposing a 10-foot public utility easement. That's outside of the right-of-way. Right-of-way is city-owned. If it's dedicated to the city. Public utility easement is the person's property. It's just that it's restricted that the utilities get to go inside of it. So that 38 feet, it consists of a sidewalk, a 2-foot curb, 2-foot shoulder, 11-foot travel lane, and then that's mimicked. It's mirrored on the other side. Now, they didn't propose it with a diagram like this, but they proposed it with 26 feet of asphalt, and we typically call a travel lane 11, leaving a 2-foot buffer, right? So it's just a 13-foot travel lane if you want to think of it that way. I wanted as we compare these up and down to kind of understand what that really means, shoulder-wise and parking-wise. The 4-foot sidewalk and the 2-foot curb and gutter leads to a 2-foot shoulder and an 11-foot travel lane or a 13-foot travel lane, however you want to look at it, but it does not provide for on-street parking. Okay. By doing that right-of-way and road scenario, that allows them to follow our setbacks. If this were a traditional subdivision in R3. The setbacks in the front are 25 feet, and by the way, the diagrams here don't show the setbacks. They don't show the lines of the setbacks, but I think that those setbacks are planned for. That's usually when they do that dotted line. That's how engineers will draw the setbacks. So they'll draw the dotted line to show everything it needs to be inside the dotted lines to be consistent with the setbacks. So that's a 20-foot setback in the rear, 25-foot setback in the front, and then a total of 20. Actually, no, in our new R3 code, I think it's different, isn't it? Anyways, the side setbacks are not necessarily the problem here. The problem is the front and the rear setbacks. If you were to put a standard section in order to adopt this road, these are the two typical sections which are for subdivisions that are right out of our transportation master plan. They both have a 60-foot right-of-way. The first one is a no on-street parking option, but then they need to show they have enough parking to justify this. And that's not just a given that we would grant this in a normal subdivision. In fact, in my opinion, it would be a pretty high bar. We don't provide a lot of clarity of what that means. It just says the Planning Commission will review the parking plan and approve it, and we need to clean that up. But that's basically 60-foot right-of-way, 2 11-foot travel lanes, a 5-foot shoulder, which 5 foot is not enough to park a car, 2.5-foot gutter, 5-foot sidewalk, and then 6.5 feet of dirt, essentially. That is the no on-street parking 60-foot right-of-way that's in our typical section. That is not the preferred option for us. The preferred option, what I would call the typical subdivision option in our code, is a 60-foot right-of-way which has 1.5 feet of dirt, 5-foot sidewalk, 2.5-foot gutter, a 10-foot parking lane, 11-foot travel lane, and then mirrored on the other side. Okay, in order for them to accommodate this typical section, according to my math, without having those, all of the measurements all the way through, I show that we would have to get to a rear yard setback of 5 feet. So we would have to go from a 20-foot setback to a 5-foot setback in order to have everything fit. With a 60-foot right-of-way. So, once again, they have their proposed, which is what's in the plan. Pretty narrow. We have the two that are out of ours, and then I have been working over the past couple of days. I've been getting a lot of feedback, a lot of requests, and we're going to have again and again and again, as we have people in the affordable home space, the 50 acres that we just approved in the annexation, they have already hit me up about having, they're like, why is your right-of-way 60 feet? They want to do a no on-street parking option, and they want to have less than 60 foot, and I've said, that's what's in our code. And they said, that's dumb, and I'm like, well, that's what's in our code. And I've had another developer that wants to do something and said, in Cedar City I can get 45 feet. And I said, well, that's not on-street parking, which is going to be kind of tough for us, but our right-of-way is 60 foot. And then finally the PUD across the street from these guys have recently come to the city asking us to accept their roads that are substandard. And their roads are even less asphalt than this. It's 31 foot of asphalt and a 4-foot sidewalk and a 2-foot curb. So it's even smaller than that. So anyways, long story short, I wondered if the council wanted to see, rather than as a committee not being technical, and I also wanted to run some ideas past McLean with Jones and DeMille that helped us with our traffic master plan. What would a smaller right-of-way look like that that we could use in scenarios like this, R2, R3, with restrictions that could accomplish some more affordable housing, and optimizing it and thinking back and forth, talking to McLean, looking at ADA rules and everything. This is the best I can do if you're going to still prioritize on-street parking, which, my personal opinion, we should put a premium on that. I don't see most of these subdivisions that don't have on-street parking work unless you have a very aggressive HOA that enforces the parking. And that's what they do across the street, but they also have a big dedicated parking space for people, and then the HOA patrols it. The city, we already struggle with enforcement. I don't want to have parking be a headache that we're now expected to enforce. We're just not a big city with dedicated parking and code enforcement driving around putting tickets on people's cars because they had a neighbor that had somebody visit out of town and parked overnight or something like that, right? So again, tried to optimize this. First I had this drawn up with a 4-foot sidewalk, and when I talked to McLean, he said a 4-foot sidewalk will pass ADA, assuming every 200 feet you have a 5-foot section for passing. So basically you have to have this bump out every 200 feet. And that's not, like, and intersections don't count, like, so it gets this weird shape when these bump outs, and then what happens is people either don't want to build them or forget to build them or something, and then to maintain it, it's kind of a headache. McLean said, I would just encourage you to use 5-foot sidewalks. They are ADA compliant, and you don't have to worry about it. So I went back to the drawing board. First, I had this at 49 feet. We went from a 2.5-foot curb to a 2-foot curb. McLean assured me that there are typical designs, cross sections for a 2-foot curb, which will fit with our weather patterns and all that stuff. We could do a 2-foot curb. It's pretty standard. 5-foot sidewalk, 8-foot travel, 8-foot parking. Oh, looks like I did copy and paste and didn't change the word. 2 parking lanes, 2 travel lanes. This is pretty narrow. 36 feet of asphalt with cars parked on it is fairly narrow, but it does work. If you go to Sky Ranch, they have a similar setup like this, only they have a 4-foot sidewalk and a 35-foot asphalt, and it functions. You have the GER subdivision, which is very similar. It functions. You have the subdivision across from the marketplace. They're all slightly different, but they do function. When I say with restrictions, we would only ever consider this if you guys are comfortable with it. If you don't like it, throw it out. But if you're comfortable with it, these are the restrictions we would do, and this comes out of state code, not as a requirement, but I'll get into that later if we need to. There's a maximum that you can enforce under certain circumstances, and what they put in there is they have to have a traffic impact study. It can only be on a local road that services single-family residential, and the traffic impact study has to show that they have less than 1,000 trips a day. So that a trip is every time a car drives down it. Less than 1,000 trips a day is shown by the traffic impact study, local road section only, and within that services single-family residential only, and then we would add the criteria that it would maybe only be allowed in certain zones. So that's this concept, right? The main advantage of that is that you're retaining your on-street parking. You've essentially traded that to developers in general. This is not just these guys that we're talking about when I talk about this option. You basically said, okay, we're going to give you a narrower right-of-way, but we're going to put a priority and keep our on-street parking. And you get it down to 50 feet. If we were to use that model here, it leaves you a rear yard of 12 feet, according to my calculations. 12 feet is much closer to 20 and still pretty reasonable than a rear yard of 5 feet.
Yep.
Thoughts, questions?
I think that accomplishes best of both worlds. Smaller setback, smaller road, but still have plenty of space in the backyard and good-sized road.
So basically, you're going to bump out, hey, there's Scotty. You're going to bump out the road, and you're going to scoot these houses back.
So what are we doing in the middle?
One
Are they
thing,
gonna be
I'm glad you brought up the middle, because I sent an email out when within an hour of you sending this to me, I sent it to the council, just so they had as much time as possible. I did not realize you guys had twin homes in the middle. I said you were going down to 45 lots, 45 homes, and I didn't realize these middle ones were twin homes. If you scroll down to this one, you can see that lot 25 will actually be cut in half and have a twin home, which we allow in our R3 code. We could allow it as part of a development agreement anyways, but you guys drew this up so that it would fit the R3 code, which is 5,000 and 5,000.
10,000 total for the lot.
And you'll notice that one of them is oriented a little closer to this road, and the other one is closer to that road, because you'd offset the driveways either side. So by the time you would scoot those a little closer together, you would scoot these top houses closer to that fence, and these bottom houses closer to that fence. That's how you would be able to fit that 50-foot right-of-way in there and still maintain two access roads for fire, and you preserve your sidewalks. You preserve a 5-foot sidewalk, actually. But that's the idea, and I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't know how the council feels about it. There's some different ways of looking at it.
Do you know about how big the driveways are?
Not off the top of my head, but they're going to be very standard size, probably 20 by 20. Depending on the setbacks, obviously, they might be a little bit bigger than that, but 20 feet wide accomplishes 2 cars.
And can you fit your largest model within that? I mean, assuming the setbacks move and all that stuff, you can fit it within all the lots that you showed here? Or is there...
If you guys were allowing us to do the setbacks of the roads currently, we'd be able to, yeah.
Okay. I'm saying, so if we move this, say we get a 50-foot right-of-way, you still maintain your 25-foot setback in the front, and you lower that setback back here, you could still put your largest model.
Correct.
You want me to move on and then come back and visit?
Well, I'm actually 100% okay with that new concept, so.
Well, and I was gonna start by saying, appreciate you working on this and coming back to us with some other things to look at and really think about, considering kind of where we've gone and what we've been through. The council seeing the 5 acre, with the 10 acre, the 5 acre lease with a 10 acre traditional, I feel like that's a great, personally, I think it's a great solution. I don't know if we have any additional feedback on that concept.
I personally don't have any problem with that.
And you're seeing it being about a 20% request on those lease lots, just so people can get into some ownership.
Yep, and that's primarily people who are extremely old that wanna save their savings for their retirement plan, or the younger people who are just barely starting out saying, hey, I can't qualify for this, so what can I qualify for? I feel like we're really, with that aspect, we're really accomplishing a market that's not traditionally there right now, with people being able to qualify for the homes and whatnot. Knowing that obviously they are renting the land, so there's gonna have the park rent or the space rent, per unit, but at the end of the day, everyone's like, well, I'm saving $200,000 by having to go buy a lot and do my foundation and everything like that, so it's been a very, hot commodity for those people who haven't thought about homeownership or thought that it was an option for them. Yep.
We would obviously dig in, we would get into, when we get back to the development agreement, to the specifics of, the percentages and how much it can go up and, all those things that we were digging into before. We'd wanna see that it was finalized in comfort level, which we're not prepared to get into that stuff tonight. The biggest thing I wanted to accomplish tonight was the general concept, and their engineer said to me the other day, how many variants am I gonna draw? I said, don't draw any more until we can at least give direction and get on the same page with the council, and then draw it up, and then we'll look at it.
Perfect.
So, every time he touches the computer, he's charging you, so we get that.
Saves him time and her money, so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's the, okay, and just to tie that back, because this is important to the first thing we talked about. If we were to come up with a new, we call these in the business, typical sections that are in our officially adopted engineering standards. If we were to adopt this as a typical section in our engineering standards, even with constraints and restrictions of when it can be used, we could then accept the road as a city road because it's within our standard. Therefore, they wouldn't have to have two full entities, an HOA. They may want to have an HOA, so just so you guys know, probably most everybody in the room does know this, the city does not, we don't require HOAs except for in certain circumstances where we need to make sure there's proper maintenance of common owned property and stuff like that. Other than that, we don't really care if a subdivision has an HOA or not. We require their documentation if they're gonna set one up, but we don't require it, nor do we enforce their HOA rules. So you could still choose to have an HOA if you wanted in this subdivision, you just wouldn't be required to per our development agreement because of the maintenance.
Gotcha.
So, personally, if you're looking at a hybrid, I would say keep it as simple as possible, since you're gonna have this entity that's gonna be dealing with stuff in the 5 acres. Let's just only have one of those, and then the other subdivision, if we could figure it out, be a traditional subdivision.
Yep.
As far as the city roads are concerned.
We're right there with you as well.
And Aldo, if you have anything to add to this, at any time, jump up as you do. I know that he gets in the middle of it because there's expectations of the city, and that always ends up in Aldo's camp.
Yep.
That's why I hate PUDs, because eventually people come to the city and say, I pay taxes too, why don't you treat me the way you treat everybody else? And we say, well, we gave your developer extra density, so you have to pay a fee forever. But theoretically, they also got a cheaper home, theoretically.
So my comments come from the maintenance standpoint of narrowing streets is narrowing snow removal, narrowing garbage collection, that type of stuff. Typically, when we plow, we try to plow curb to curb. Someday winter will come back to Parowan again. I mean, we haven't had to do much plowing, and that's understandable. But that's where, my concern comes in on narrowing the road widths. Can we still plow one lane through there? Absolutely, but when we rick it to a car,
How do you do it in these subdivisions that I've mentioned that have narrower streets?
some cars are off the street, sometimes we plow around them and push them up, you know, and kinda move the snow the best that we can, so we're not burying cars. We try not to bury people or driveways, but as you're snaking through there, inevitably you roll off a big clump of snow and somebody's gonna get it. And
That's the case for almost every subdivision, right?
Yeah,
A subdivision.
oh yeah, I'm
That
just saying that's one of the issues we get, and we get phone calls saying you pushed half of the road, more than half of the road onto us, back and forth, and so I know we can open up roads however we want to open up roads, but we get the complaints back. I mean, that I've had people even measure out and be standing there when you come by, and you put your cut edge right here, and we just wave politely and go on by. But those are the kind of things, and inevitably it always snows on trash day, and so you've got a trash truck sliding around in there. Just, these are the problems from the field, you know.
And you also use different equipment depending on the subdivision because of
Yeah,
some of your turning radiuses.
typically, so in Gurr subdivision and Maple Springs, a lot of those ones that have cul-de-sacs and whatnot, will take a loader down through there because you're up higher, you can see better, you can manipulate a little bit better, doing that type of stuff, but, if a loader goes down or different things that happen, I'm just giving my perspective from a field operator's standpoint. More public works, we get it done regardless. But those are my concerns of it, so, thank you.
I'm sure the one across the street from the market is a nightmare.
Yes, and you not only have vehicles parked on the right of way, you have, you know, if there's construction going on, you have dumpsters stuck out there, you have travel trailers stuck out there, and, you know, very rarely do they pull clear to the curb. You've got the curb plus the 2 foot plus another 1.5 foot in the travel trailers clear out. And so, like I said, these are just the viewpoints from the field, from providing maintenance and pickup in these types of areas. Go back to the drawing, you've got roughly, like 15 homes down each side on some of the denser stuff. I mean, I can't see all that well, I'm half blind. But, you know, so roughly you got 15 cans intermingled with, trash cans intermingled with cars parked on the street, intermingled with the snow plow. And I'm giving you worst case scenarios, you know, a snow rick pushed up against some of that stuff, and, you know, trying to just operate down through there. Like I said, we can get it done. There's things you can do, like down in the grocery store parking lots, or the grocery store subdivisions. All those trash cans go to one side of the road, and so then the trash truck can just run down there on trash day. He's not having to run down, turn around, and flip, you know, and come back. So there's stuff like that you can use to help mitigate space, to do that types of things, or park everybody on one side of the street, or just different things like that. But, like I said, that's just the narrowing and that many cars, then inevitably you have a basketball hoop stuck out there too, you know, and just the type of things that subdivisions have.
And frankly, so all those focus mostly on streets and snow and things and trash.
Just the maintenance.
But as far as utilities, the best case scenario is for us to have the utilities built to the standard and have the city own everything up to the meter.
Yep.
For water, for power, and for sewer, it's the main and the lateral, but
usually with like the 10-foot strip for the utility easement, that's great. Like, Sky Ranch is that way, my old home was that way. The only issue is when you have to perform maintenance on some of that stuff, the city, you know, if it's landscaped, costs us more because we try to put it back to what it was. So you've got some additional.
Well, typically we're gonna have water and sewer under the road, we're gonna have storm drain right under the curb and gutter, and you're gonna have power and telecommunications and gas in that 10 feet
Yep,
outside the
along
road.
with the water meter barrel will be stuck.
And the water meter's right on the property edge.
In that area. So that's, like I say, it works, and it's not a problem until it's a problem, and then we just clean it up and we go about our business. But those, like I say, these are just some of the comments from the field.
The reason I bring up the utilities, let's say we don't dedicate the streets because it's not up to our standard. We're still gonna want to have easements for the utilities so that we can get in and work on them because we're providing that service. So theoretically, we're digging up an HOA's road.
Mhm.
And you can see how that can sometimes get a little iffy, and if we have to, we dig it up and we'll repair it.
One
But-
thing that we did, in that scenario was it's written pretty heavily in the documents, papers, on the plat, wherever you want it. We did this for Aspen Meadows, the annexation, up in Bryan Head. Basically, if there was a water leak, we dig down, we repair the leak, and then we come back up with road base and we walk away. And then the HOA or whoever takes care of their asphalt paving and however they want the surface to look. Basically, the city goes in and does the repair, and then road bases it, brings it level, and then it goes on to the homeowner or their contractor or whoever they want.
So obviously, we would want to address it whatever way we would agree to with them. I'm just saying the best case scenario is that it's built to a standard, dedicated to the city. We treat it like everything else in the city.
Yep.
That's the best case scenario. That's, we try to get away from the PUDs where we have this weird ownership. Inevitably, down the road, you have citizens that feel like it's not fair. So, okay, we beat that horse
Right.
to death?
I haven't heard anything about fire code and fire response.
So fire code is a given that we would have, of course, all of the, first of all, having 2 access points and making sure the road is built to a width, which all of these qualify under that. And then, of course, they're gonna have to have their hydrants and everything. That's not even a question. Nor are they asking for any variance there, so.
But access, if you have it narrow.
Right, so International Fire Code, we can go look it up, but we're wider than that. Because their scenario is a no on-street parking scenario, is it theirs? So 38 feet is plenty. Actually, not 38, it's 26 feet of asphalt. We'll look at that, but I'm almost positive that that's within International Fire Code.
Question with,
But I'll look.
if we're looking to adopt this 50-foot right-of-way for them, are you trying to say we're gonna adopt it for all future subdivisions?
What I'm saying is this. We could come up with an agreement with them, and that's just what we adopt here. But in order for us to, I mean, that's what they put in their subdivision, because we require it with a development agreement. But if for us to accept it as a deeded road, it needs to be a typical section that we adopt into our standard. And by doing that, it can be used anywhere. By the way, me thinking up that was not for these guys. I did not optimize that for their use. I looked at it like we have a lot of people asking and a lot of pressure, and we knew we were gonna be having this conversation with them. My thought was, since the preferable option is to have the city street dedicated, is there something that we could live with and even replicate at different places in the city? So,
So what's the
Could be.
largest, unit you could put on, like, lot 1 through, the outside lots, both outside lots? What's the longest?
Well, with given the setbacks are adjusting,
If we had a 12-foot setback in the back and still a 25-foot one, did we have a 25-foot one in the front?
I'll do the math for you right now.
Okay.
95, we're not gonna count the .01 foot. 95 feet minus a 12-foot setback minus a 25-foot setback. Huh? 95 feet minus 12-foot setback in the back minus a 25-foot setback in the front. 58.
we have,
No, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move the road that way, and we're gonna move the setback that way, the same distance. So you retain that 95-foot lot. Sorry, you don't retain a 95-foot lot. You retain the same
building envelope.
building availability space. 'Cause the amount that you've moved the road, you also move the setback. Does that make sense, John?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. So what's your largest,
But I need to see your engineer do it. But I'm telling you, what I did is I looked at all the setbacks and the right-of-ways. I widened the right-of-way, which means I had to make up for it in the setbacks. You effectively have 3 setbacks that you can take that space out. So if you, the math on it is this. If you go from a 38-foot right-of-way to a 50-foot, you have to make up 12 feet within your setbacks, right? Wait, hang on. No. If you go from a 38-foot to a 50-foot, yeah. So you have to make up 12 feet twice. We need to gain 24 feet. We're going to gain 24 feet by subtracting it off of 3 rear setbacks. 28 divided by 3, 24 divided by 3 is 8. You take a setback of 20 right now, you're minus 8, and you end up with 12. That's the math of the rear yards at 12. So I don't have their measurements, but I have mathematically done that, and by moving that setback 12 feet on this lot and the bottom lot, you will have freed up enough space for a 50-foot right-of-way in the middle. And if that lot is now 95 feet, and you make it 12 feet smaller. Yeah, no, you don't. You make it 8 feet smaller. So 95 feet, you make it 8 feet smaller. But you also lower the setback. What you end up with is 87 feet, subtract, I'm glad I talked it through, because it's a little different math. Subtract the 12 foot for the rear setback, minus the 25 foot for the front, leaves you 50 feet.
so is your
That-
largest
50 feet.
unit 50 feet?
Nope, it would be 56 would be the best one that I could fit onto those lots. But in the middle section, we are able to sell those lots with the bigger home as well, with the Shoshone floor plan, which would be 76 feet long.
'Cause you're dealing with 124 feet on this here, you have more room. You may be able to wiggle that around and get equal numbers and put your biggest model in any of them. You're gonna have to do that math.
For sure. Yep, engineers are key for that.
But our question is, can we live with a 12-foot setback and a 50-foot right-of-way? And the next question is, are you comfortable with that as a typical section so we can adopt these roads as public roads? Or do you want to stick to the guns of a 60-foot right-of-way, therefore requiring them to have an HOA and keep maintenance of their own roads and all that?
And didn't you say we already had a couple others asking about that too?
Well, you have the PUD across the street. Their problem is their asphalt is only 31 feet. And they have a no parking, and they enforce it. And it's a different, I don't want to get too into the weeds on that. I'm a lot more concerned with new subdivisions coming in, asking for a smaller right-of-way. And I'm more than happy to tell them, this is what it is in Parowan, if that's what you guys want to do. I'm just saying, as we're having this conversation, it theoretically could snowball into a bigger thing, and that might be an okay thing if you like it, or if you don't like it, then we go away from it. I'm just trying to give you options.
So if the roadway, if we're just talking about roadway, and for this situation, we have the setback at 12 feet.
That doesn't mean we change the setback everywhere.
Okay,
No.
just want to check.
No.
So so we got 50 feet from both of those sides. That's, majority of the lots in there. So what's your smallest manufactured home?
The smallest,
The length, about
40 feet.
40, okay.
One of my favorite floor plans is 48 feet long.
Beautiful.
And that's Cabco's #1 selling floor plan. It's 28 feet wide by 48 feet long, 1,250 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
So the option is, if we, if we don't wanna take care of the, if we make 50-foot roads just for them, it would have to be, they own the roads,
Correct.
maintain it.
Correct.
And if we change it, the sky's the limit would this change, because they haven't submitted subdivision plans, would this change
No.
to,
We're gonna do what we're gonna do by development agreement, which gives us the ability to color outside the lines. I'm saying, in order for us to accept the final plat and have the road dedication, we would need to have that typical section adopted, which we could do between now and then.
Or do you only adopt it in R3?
You could adopt it in R3 only, R2 and R3, R1 and R2, R3, or nothing.
I like that thought of just adopting it in R3.
R3 is only.
Dallas called me asking about it in that 50 acres. And that 50 acres has some R3 and some R2, and I'm like, oh boy, were you gonna have different road here versus there within their whole thing?
You can't do that, but
So that's why my thought was R2 and R3 if we're gonna go there, but.
So if we went to this 50 foot,
Yeah.
then the other 5 acres would have to be exactly the same, correct, or not?
No, the other 5 acres
You can have a PUD running into a subdivision?
running into a PUD.
A
You could,
PUD run,
but I would suggest, cause we're gonna do it all by development agreement, make it the same throughout the whole thing.
Mhm.
We're not gonna dedicate those streets to us anyways.
What
in the,
streets?
in the 5 acres. We don't wanna have dedicated streets on a big tract of land that isn't subdivided. In my opinion. They may at some point in the future move on from that model and, they may develop the property. That's happened in a lot of places, that when the person operating it eventually says, you know what, we'll sell you your lots, we'll end up subdividing it later, or, whatever, within the terms of the lease agreement, say, you got 20 years and you gotta move your home, we're gonna do something else with the property. Typically, once you establish a park, they're usually there for life.
Mhm.
But theoretically, it's just one owner, and we have public streets that we don't wanna really own their streets on their land. But that's just my opinion. We don't own streets inside the RV park, we don't own streets inside mobile home parks, it's just one piece of parcel, right, one parcel.
Yep.
But we could design it to the same standard.
Yep. And that brings us back to the word shall. We shall have the availability to sell the lots later on, like we went through with the process about a year ago, I guess.
Exactly.
That's right.
So the question, I do, sorry, I have
No, it's
too
good.
many questions, but, so looking at this 50, the parking is 8 feet. Is it, who decides which side of the street is, and who's gonna, if we own the street, sorry, chief, gonna have to hire another cop to do this, but, who's gonna enforce the parking?
What parking?
Well, it says right here, parking on one side of the street. The other side of the street's no parking.
Oh, he missed.
No, that's supposed to say parking, travel parking.
Parking too.
Oh.
That was an error.
He was copy and pasting and didn't.
Okay.
missed one.
You didn't paste
We don't have
it, no.
3 travel lanes, we only have 2. That was,
Well, I just thought, 28 feet.
I had it done and then I had to redo it, and so then I copied pasted. So, yeah, this would be like any other street in the city. it is in fact, some people think they own the parking in front of their house, and they don't. They especially hate it when somebody else parks there. And we're like, sorry, it's literally a public right-of-way. Somebody's entitled to park there. If they abandon their vehicle there, then we can chalk it, and 72 hours later we can have it towed. But people are allowed to park there, and that would be the case here. It would be anybody can park whatever they want. Then, and you mentioned the 8 feet. We would in this model, and this is, I literally created these in Excel. Normally we have engineers that show it, right? We would probably only do this with a rolled curb design. If we put a hard curb, you can't, I apologize for the language, this is the engineer talk. They call it when the vehicle mounts the curb. That's the vehicle. The vehicle goes up onto the curb in order to park. With a narrower road, they'll typically do a rolled curb design. I don't know why they called the vehicle mounting the curb, but that's what they call it. So, it would be a rolled curb. Here's my point. You have 8 feet of lane for the parking. You also effectively have some buffer in the curb for people to put their tires and things like that, right? So it's not quite 10 feet of space there for them to put their car, but it's 9, whatever, to the point where it starts to roll up and however people park their tires and all that stuff. So again, and if you want to know how this feels like, drive the Sky Ranch. There's two. Part of Sky Ranch has curb gutter and sidewalk, and the other part doesn't. Drive the part that has curb gutter and sidewalk because it's very similar to this. The asphalt is 1 foot narrower than this, and the sidewalks are one foot smaller each. But other than that, just to see how people are parking cars and trailers and stuff, and you can drive that neighborhood to see kind of what this feels like. Okay, any other questions on this, or? Okay, so open space / rec, the new version of this is proposed. There was some open space on here. Now there isn't. We did have parking available back here. Sorry, I don't want to get into parking yet because that's a different bullet item. But open space, I told Braden and Brady that we've gone on quite a journey since we last met in talking about open space in Parowan, even to the point we adopted an ordinance. That ordinance doesn't legally play here, but as we're doing a development agreement, some of those principles may be on the council's mind. I don't know how the council feels about it. I did do the math to show if you were to follow our new ordinance, which isn't mandatory, but if you follow the same methodology, you would need for the entire property, the 10 acres plus the 5 acres, about 3/4 of an acre. That's what our new ordinance requires, with a ½ acre on the 10 acre piece and a 1/4 acre. And it is exactly that because it's the percentage, the way it works out. 10 acres times 5% is ½ an acre. But I don't know if it's exactly 10 acres and exactly 5 acres, but it gives you an idea of what our new ordinance would require. Now, that, by the way, is not a built park. Our new ordinance doesn't say you have to build a park. What our ordinance says, you have to dedicate that to the city, the raw land. And we talked about, and it didn't find its way into the ordinance, but we're not operating under the ordinance. We're operating under development agreement, maybe giving some credit if some improvements and things like that. That was one of the things that the mayor talked a lot about. A trail system, if you were to actually literally improve some of that open space, that maybe we would give space credits on that. We didn't ever put that into our code, but it could be developed. Now, I mean, and it could be in our development agreement. Just trying to give ideas and options and play it out. At one point, we were talking pickleball courts. John was like, what about the younger kids and all of that stuff? So what are your guys' thoughts? And you're like, well, we could maybe go, and I was like, don't do anything yet. Let's talk about it. What's the council's thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Very open to that, knowing that these are 1/4 acre lots, and I got 5 kids and I'm on a .15 right now, so.
But they're not 1/4 acre lots. They're 6,000 square foot lots.
Oh, up on the top, you're right. I mean, I'm right there on a .15, as well, and I got 5 kids that we're playing in our yard all the time, throwing the ball back and forth, jumping on our trampoline. And then knowing obviously the middle lots are gonna be 5,000 square foot essentially per, door. There's a lot of good space there, but again, we are open to, adhering to what you just barely had shown up on there. So, yeah, we just would like your guys' feedback and be able to put this together.
Whereas this isn't common ownership, these would be separate lots, people could fence them in. They would just follow the regular city code, so you could have fences and yards. Before, you guys were kind of imagining more of an open
Yep.
layout. Is the subdivision, people could fence these and have yards. That's one difference. I don't know how much that plays out in your mind, but that's a material difference from before.
Yep. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I still wanna see some more open space,
More open space?
yeah.
And do we consider the retention pond open space?
I'm gonna say no, I mean, they can still use it for some of it, but I'd like to see more than just that. There's too many housing opportunities in there to have nowhere to go.
Yeah, well, like I said, we're totally open to figuring out the solution together.
You could grass that detention
Yeah.
pond and turn it into a
It
little
would help.
soccer field or something.
It'd help, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Little throwing field for football
They
or,
did that a lot.
Mhm.
But like, I'd like to see it like farther into the subdivision, so.
Like lot 13, where you
Yeah.
have the pickleball courts.
So do you guys feel strongly about a total square footage? Do you wanna see what they come back with? Do you wanna give them, you would say if you make improvements to it, less is okay? What do you think about all these ideas?
Yeah, since we technically can't hold you to our new standard, it's like, just make something good, you know?
so a half acre for the 10 acres?
Yeah, that would meet standard, so.
No,
Yeah, that's like a quarter acre.
That retention pond's just over a quarter.
so just add another,
You did something in the front and something in the back?
Right.
That'd get you two similar,
You're right there,
yeah.
yeah, we can figure that out.
Okay, let's keep going. So parking, and I carved that out because I didn't wanna wrap it in with the open space conversation. If we go with the 50-foot right-of-way that I showed, parking becomes almost a non-issue, because you're gonna have driveways with 2 spots, and you're gonna have parking on the streets. It's when you have a street that doesn't have parking on it that then we say, are the 2 spots that are in a driveway sufficient? Right? So I don't know how everybody feels about that, because all of your proposals up to this point had no on-street parking. And, before, when you had all that off-street parking, I know the planning commission was like, is it enough, isn't it? And they kinda went around and gravel versus whatever, and then they were like, okay, at least there's enough off-street parking spots. When the first one came in and it had no on-street parking on those streets and didn't have any other parking, it was a red flag for me, 'cause I'm like, you're gonna have them all out on the highway and parking anyways, and then enforcement and all that stuff. So I don't know what, I mean, let me put it this way, if this was a standard subdivision because of a standard street, we'd say, yep, we'd move right past parking because you've accomplished it. Okay, let's talk about phased build-out. I'm unclear as to what you're thinking. I know that you're wanting to look at kind of a phased build-out on the 10 acres, but what I don't understand is, how do you sell, or how do you lease lots back here? Are you thinking that you would put in all of the streets and all of the utilities
on one side or the other is what I was kinda thinking, to be able to accomplish getting back there with the temporary turnaround.
So just from a fire code, we would probably say you can do that as long as you don't go over so many spots.
28 homes, correct?
30.
30?
30 is the International Fire Code before you need 2 access points. Just administratively, that's what I would say. So you're thinking that rather than build out half of it like this with temporary turnouts, you'd build one street to a certain point.
Yep, and the benefit of that is for the future plans, we are still trying to negotiate with Russell Emery to be able to adopt his, or, acquire his 7.5 acres.
And if you did that, then you would be talking about tying in something down here, right?
Yep.
Oh, he said he was gonna sell it.
So, I'm not gonna put words into the council's mouth, but I know what our code says. You would be limited to 30 homes
Before the other.
Total.
before the other access was put in.
Perfect. That gets us started at least,
Yeah.
so I see with that.
30 homes in both, between the two.
Yep.
And from a subdivision, a technicality standpoint, you phase things out. We have to record final plats. The final plat is actually what creates the lots as separate parcels so that you can
Okay.
sell separate ownership. You would need to show a phased final plat of phase 1.
Okay.
And the number, basically what we would do is we'd say 30 homes minus the number of lots approved in phase 1 is how many you could put in the 5 acres. That would limit you in the 5 acres.
Mhm.
Let's say you put 15 lots, 15 home sites in phase 1. That means that you would be restricted to 15 homes back here
Sweet.
before you'd have to build the second thing.
Yep, the idea of it in my head is to have 1 through 12 sold as quickly as possible, so that way it's, the functionality and the transition through the neighborhood is as nice as it can be. Knowing that we can obviously sell up to 18 more of them, might look at doing some of the duplex lots before we even get back to that 5 acres, so, still.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm confused then, because if we're only going to phase that out, how are we, so we're just gonna have one in and out right here? Just
You
the
have
one?
one in and out right here until you get 30 homes.
30 homes?
And then the second would have to be installed.
Yep.
So how are we turning around?
There
Like, we're just gonna make some temporary
would be a temporary turnaround at the end. So,
here?
I mean,
5
I
acres.
would say this,
I just wanna be clear.
don't get too into the weeds from the council's perspective. This is subdivision layout. We're gonna wanna see from the city's engineer that everything, 'cause there's engineering standards for temporary turnarounds as you phase things out. We're gonna have to make sure the utilities, the water model gets approved. At a certain point, you have to loop it and things like that, right? My question is, from a development agreement standpoint, is when are we gonna trigger the need for the open space improvements to be done? Is that for phase 1 to be approved? Or is that for phase 2 to be approved? You know what I'm saying? Those are the things that matter to go into the development agreement. The other stuff will be handled on an engineering technical basis of what functions.
How many phases would there be in this? 2, 3?
Yeah, no more than 3 for sure.
Including the 5 acres?
Mhm.
How many spaces would you have in the 5 acres?
Not exactly sure on that. Yep, so it's just as much, or what the city codes will allow us, with the engineer being able to draw it up.
We would use would you use a similar approach to this?
Yeah, it'd look very similar to what we have shown right here, just follow it along in the back.
They need to draw up those new plans for that. And I just, like I said, I had told them to hold off on drawing up.
No, it's just a curiosity question, that's all.
Yep. And I just wasn't sure we're talking the phases. It made perfect sense to me to move out, but then I thought, wait a minute, if from day 1 you wanna be able to sell in either place, I didn't know how that worked or what
Gotcha.
that looked like.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I think just 1 through 12 and then have the, PUD utilities, 'cause I believe they're different than in front of this subdivision, to be able to go back there knowing that as soon as we sell a home for a rental space, then we can improve the pad and move that back there. And knowing that it's still under the 30 before we have to do the fire code, another egress, entrance, exit.
And depending on what the state approves, you may have to loop the water line from day one anyway, so.
Gotcha.
Sewer and power don't work quite the same, but water, we hate dead ends.
Yep.
Fire flow is the first thing that triggers that. The second thing is dead ends that could lead to, stagnation of water and things like that, so. But that'll be an engineering call. Okay, so I wanted to ask about that, and I didn't put this on your thing, but it occurred to me right when we were starting this meeting. I know that we wanna have a fencing discussion. We're in the middle of adopting a fencing code. We have residential bordering on commercial. If you acquire Russ Emery's, you're gonna wanna rezone it residential, and then we don't have the residential to commercial boundary, which would frankly be a relief. Theoretically, you could have higher density residential versus higher density residential, which triggers different kind of fencing. We'll see exactly how that ordinance passes. But we definitely are gonna have residential to commercial between this parcel and up here north of the 5-acre parcel. And I don't know yet how that ordinance is gonna land, but the ordinance won't apply to you anyways. The development agreement was what will apply. So, I don't know I know there's a few different opinions. I don't know if there's different opinions, but I know there's at least one strong opinion. What does the council think on that?
I wanna see a wall.
To me, you would need a wall too. Not chain link wall. The wall.
Abutting to the commercial, resident, no, but to commercial, yeah.
So you're saying
Resident to commercial.
on that north boundary, the northwest boundary and the north boundary?
So what is Emery's, right now?
Emery's is commercial.
So technically, we'd need a wall on that side too.
Yep. And then you get into the
Unless-
phasing discussion. Do you make them put in the wall as they build the phases? 'Cause that's typically how they do it.
Yeah, that's what I would say, you
Don't
have
the leverage.
as you go, yeah.
But that's the problem we're having with the other issue, why we're doing a fencing ordinance,
How so?
is that we're allowing them to do it in phases, and people are complaining about that. They're saying that we should have made them build a fence all the way around their property.
Well, the problem there is that they didn't put the fence in when they
Yeah,
built
I mean,
that
I shouldn't
phase.
even bring that up, but
Yeah, you were talking about a
Yeah.
different issue.
RV
Yeah.
park?
Yeah,
we
the
don't
RV
need
park.
sorry.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about
The
it.
difference here is that for the next subdivision phase, they're gonna have to go through the process, and what you put in the development agreement is enforceable in order to get the final plat. So, I'm less concerned about that. The one nice thing about this phasing approach, the way you've talked about on the north side right here, if you do acquire that property, it would be dumb to have put in the wall in order to get phase one, and then you acquire that property, and now you don't even need the wall there.
Yep, agreed.
Between your own property and the same project. But, see, here's the other thing, depending on how the ordinance, 'cause the way that ordinance ends up is probably gonna it will represent the majority of the council's opinion. And there's two ideas. One is the last one to build, builds, and the other one is the person who builds against the zone. So it's use or zone, and the planning commission recommended it by use, and right now, the property north of you and south of you are not in a commercial use, 'cause it's raw land.
Mm-hmm.
The way the planning commission recommended it, you wouldn't have to put in the wall, the way the ordinance is written. The city council, and I don't know yet how they'll vote, has talked about maybe requiring it by zone, meaning whoever's building first against another zone, or if there's a use there, triggering whoever's developing to put in the wall. even if they're the first one to develop. So, we don't know how that'll go yet, but I expect the opinions to be the same on how that goes to how they're gonna want that in the development agreement. Is that fair to say, council?
I think that's fair, at least in my mind.
So, but that doesn't have to be decided tonight, I'm just wanted to have the discussion and hear the council's thoughts. Those are the pre-done items that I had. Have I missed something? Do you guys have questions or thoughts? I wanna throw a tomato at us. Do you guys have questions or thoughts, council, or, you don't get to throw tomatoes, throw it at the public.
Is this coming back to like another work meeting, or are we going?
We need
Right
to
on
give them
action.
direction, so they can
They
set
know
their
where to
engineers
go.
to drawing stuff up, so I can start drawing up a development agreement.
Yep.
So we're not gonna vote on anything, but we need to know direction.
So, Dan, get me straight on the, development agreement. We can't have the 50-foot right-of-way their responsibility in this
We can,
agreement?
we can.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, if we don't want to adopt that into the city's engineering standards as an allowed typical section, we can let them do it and just do it by development agreement. And then they.
I mean, I'd feel a little bit more listening to Aldo and his crew,
Mhm.
you know, we have to think about, you know, what's happening not only here, but we have a couple big
Oh, yeah.
ones.
But if you like the idea of that 50-foot road and typical section, then they can go and the associated setback, they can start designing their stuff. We can still decide later whether we wanna adopt it into the city's
Oh, okay,
stuff
okay.
or not.
Yep.
Oh, I was thinking.
That lets
as
them move
the-
forward
okay.
with
I
design.
thought you said if we
No,
did this.
that decision of whether we adopt it or not, won't even be made in accordance with these, well, it will if we're gonna take over ownership, we'll have to hurry and adopt it,
Yeah.
but it's bigger than them.
So if we don't adopt these streets, they have to handle the water meters, any problems throughout the whole subdivision.
Well, if this is a standard subdivision, a PUD, I would still recommend, I don't like the way we have it in the subdivision across the street.
Yeah, Eagle Rock does that.
Because, like, Eagle Rock is gonna be digging up water lines that we provide
Yeah.
water over. That's the way it is there. I don't like that. I'd rather actually have a recorded easement and have them build it to our standard and us take over maintenance of it.
Yep.
That's what I would prefer.
That would be the better way, I think.
Yeah.
And at that point, we don't have to do the HOA for the 10 acres, correct?
Well, if we don't adopt the streets, you do.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So I guess, is everybody comfortable for, whether or not we decide to adopt it for the city code or not, are you guys comfortable with that 50-foot street and a smaller setback in the back, 12-foot setbacks in the back? Are you guys comfortable with that? Are you guys comfortable with that? If so, they can
That's
redesign
just
it.
applying it to this application.
Right now, that's what we're talking about.
Just this,
Just the-
Yep.
okay.
I don't have any problem.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, I'm okay as long as it's just this one.
Okay, we'll talk about it for the other, I mean, when we actually write it up, we'll need to decide if we're gonna adopt it or not, so that they have to decide whether, so that they have an HOA or not. We'll eventually need to know that, but for tonight, and have them send their engineer to designing, we don't have to decide it tonight.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it.
Sweet. All right.
Feels like a win, just to have some
Way to go.
direction on that.
Yep, couldn't agree.
I think that we were kind of on the same space with you guys on, some open space stuff. I'd like to see you come back with some ideas on that.
Cool.
Parking, if we've decided the 50-foot, I think we've kind of decided that parking thing. Fencing, we will decide that as we're voting on the, development agreement. That's not gonna change your design.
Nope.
That lets your engineer do his design.
Yep. Gets us started.
I think we have come a long way tonight.
Yes, I do agree with that. What's the next step for us, other than having Brett redo the plans?
Well, and I guess the final thing is, are we comfortable with the hybrid approach, the 10 acre with a subdivision, the 5 acre with the lease lots? Shouldn't technically affect their design work, but can we just agree to one
I
way
think
or
it's
the other?
better off to be that way. It's
Better
where
that way?
selling them some lots, yeah.
Okay.
It opens their customer base,
Yeah.
'Cause I can start working on the development agreement,
Exactly.
with some variations based on an HOA required or not. I mean, we already have one, but I can start modifying what we have.
That works for me. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for your time today. Yep. We look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Do you need one motion?
Yes, we do need a motion.
I move to adjourn.
I second
I'll
it.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, that motion carries.
I third it.